Season 6, Episode 15, Turbulence on the Ground. Thank you to subscriber Grace Kennedy for suggesting this topic. Grace describes the congestion of passenger traffic heading down escalators to collect their luggage, causing a safety hazard pile-up. Airports are busy, and this would not be the first time to consider cranky travellers, remarks Alan. Trajce asks, who owns the problem? While Sara reflects both on human behaviour and airport design. Hello, and welcome to the WOWORK podcast, a series of playful legal dissections on the most curious and alarming events in the world of work. The podcasters Alan Girl, Trajce Svetkovsky and Sara Pazell debate how to craft a better experience of work. Sit back, relax and enjoy. And remember, none of the things we talk about today should be construed as legal advice or any other type of advice. We're just here to talk about all things related to work.
Welcome to the system.
Yeah. 1, 2, kid. This speed. R for D. And we're gonna bust it up like this. I'm crushing empty bourbon cans with my dirty hands, poisoned by devil's weed, dreaming off foreign lands. Ever since my very spark of life, I've been caught in this astrological plot.
2023 conference in Adelaide last November.
It was fun.
It was fun. We ran a design sprint, workshop sprint, just to give a taste test to what that looks like for what would be a full day workshop for clients wanting to unpack case law, consider the redesign of work and the 3 pillars of work: workplace protections, people and culture, and design, all underpinned and mediated by human factors, and really explore how to redesign work, right? So Grace Kennedy was an attendee, a delegate at this workshop, and she says, oh, thanks very much for the workshop. It was great fun to think on our feet, right? They were thrown in the deep end. They pretended they were in a podcast. They all got the microphone. Alan, unfortunately, was away, but, you know, he's still learning from our experiences and contributing with the defense part and raring to go for a workshop this year, aren't you, Alan?
Absolutely.
It might be in Tasmania. We might do a real earth-shaking one in Tasmania. All right, so I came across an interesting WHS issue. This is from Grace Kennedy, right? It was a crowd control problem on the way out of Sydney Airport domestic terminal. Escalators come down from arrivals and the landing area is very small at the bottom, and you've got a 45-degree angled glass wall that you meet. You have to double back slightly and go down the corridor to baggage claim. I think we've all, you kind of picture that, right? That awkward angle, whatever. Yep.
Yeah, it's a sharp left.
Sharp,
yeah.
I've not noticed it a problem before, except today. An endless stream of passengers were heading down the escalator, and only one of the 2 was going down. There were approximately 20 people already in the egress area, and there was no space, nowhere for anyone coming down the escalator to go. So we're bunching up, piling up in the back of this. You got this angled area. The landing space couldn't afford to accommodate everyone coming down, and you're bunching up like an accordion being crunched up, right? Backpedaling on the escalators, you're trying to walk backwards to get back up, make space, because you don't want to run in like a domino effect to everybody down the bottom. Trying to avoid tripping over other people and all the trolley bags too. And there were a number of staff, standing at the entrance trying to direct people to go down the corridor in single file. It seemed to be causing a hazard at the bottom of the escalator. With collision hazards, right? Some passengers are arguing now with a staff member, so there's getting this more aggressive tone to this. And there was a second queue of people from another direction pushing empty wheelchairs, so it's really getting congested. It was the most bizarre incident of crowd control or lack thereof in egress, and it could easily have turned into the causation of an accident, okay? So Grace tells us that it's cleared after a few minutes, but wow, now she realizes that was incredibly bad. And she's just interested in this observation with the poor physical space design, poor instructions, very complex nature of human behavior, the lack of teamwork or decision-making, and the interplay that needed to happen. If you're on that escalator heading into a pile of people, who's taking control, who's taking command, who's got that spoken authority or unspoken authority to change behaviors. And she's now, she had time then on the plane to start deliberating this. So she's just throwing that at us.
Alan?
Well, the airlines are hammering at the moment, and that's probably right. They probably deserve it. But, well, I shouldn't say that. The end result might not be entirely of their cause. For example, flights being delayed all over the place, and it's just, as a regular flyer, it's not a great experience. But what our listener has described, that just shouldn't be. That should be able to redesign, should be able to rebuild.
Yeah. What I took that differently. It doesn't have to be an airport setting. What it appears to be, this whether it's a shopping centre, when it's bucketing rain, or we know, for example, airports are busy. Observational data would clearly indicate the scenario that it's just been presented is not only a regular occurrence, it is overwhelmingly regular. What I'm curious about is this wouldn't be the first time someone would have turned their minds to this hectic scenario. Mm-hmm. So the question is very valid, Alan. Why hasn't there been anyone's, like the C-suite's mind, why haven't they turned their minds to redesigning, knowing fully well that there's an army of impatient people coming down? So,
well, they're probably cranky because,
travel.
Correct.
Travel is not a great experience these days.
Not an unusual concept to know that you're going to have cranky travellers, people bursting to go to the toilet or whatever, just
managing children, waiting for a connection flight, luggage.
Yeah.
Right.
No, squarely, it is a bit of indictment. To me, it all seems to be like, look, don't worry about it until something occurs, until there's a catastrophe. Don't worry about it until shit happens, pardon the language.
And you spoke about a pattern of occurrences, right, which speaks to the risk management brain, the probabilistic. But if it's bad enough, even the consequence brain needs to come into play, right? If this is just bad enough and it can happen once or rarely and it's really significant, then that also warrants attention.
Yep, and speaking to airports, I've mentioned this in the previous podcast, was again airports. It always struck me, you have 15 processing bays, so 15 counters to check in. This is before all the roaming. This is quite a number of years ago. Yet only 8 employees were at the desk, because obviously why employ 15? Wages are going to be a big part of your expenditure. And in this particular incident, an elderly person had died of natural causes. And that created, of course, so much stress and so much hysteria that change was implemented. But it took a customer to drop dead, literally, at the airport for action. So sometimes I wonder, is that what it takes? It takes, for example, someone to fall down the escalators, or someone to knock someone else down, or someone to get into a fight.
A child to die on that?
You're a man who loves his Australian standards, but
yes,
there must be something in the Australian standard saying don't congest the ends of escalators.
But remember that, it's just a standard. It's not the law. It's just a standard. Tick a box. So what happens is, if there is the threat of a due diligence prosecution, now I'm sounding like a couple of other academics I know, and I agree with them, sometimes you've got to rattle that saber.
Yeah, look, I agree with that.
It's true.
To commence change.
Sometimes
you need some saber rattling.
And let's think about
because the standard won't cut it. Sorry to cut it, but the standard just won't do, or else we wouldn't have this issue that our kind reader has.
Well, hopefully some engineer will write into us and say it's Australian standard, whatever, and
I'd say, so what, mate? They're still doing it.
Oh well.
So.
Oh, you mean if there's a solution?
If it's standard, I think there's a lot of capacity to raise it with the airport.
Yeah, fair enough.
There has to be an egress.
If you need to go through the compliance model, that avenue to discuss this.
It acts as a trigger.
Yeah.
There's got to be a standard.
But let's unpack the socio-technical system of how complicated this is, because airport management, you've got multiple suppliers in this chain. The chain of responsibility is quite diverse. So you've got the facilities, right? The actual airport management.
Well, I think the airlines won't control that piece of realty.
Right, so that's what I'm getting at, right? So you've got airlines, right, who will be influencing, and regulators, the number of flights and how they're operating. You've got the facility itself that has to try and model in their designing, model it and simulate and understand what that traffic patterning might be like. But how much can they, know unless every system actor is very truthful and honest and collaborates to try and analyze the impact, the realities of that work experience and that customer experience where everybody's a customer, employees and, passengers. You've got the people who control the air traffic and the airways, different management. There are the security staff, which are contracted, not by the airport, and baggage claim. You've got cleaning staff. You've got, go through the list, and they're all pods and Ps, different Ps in this pod. And I see this in mining where they're like, oh, well, speak to our supplier. Well, hang on, you're the face of it. There's still the chain of responsibility. You're the PCBU too, right? So you've got to unpack who owns the problem. How is this a shared problem before you go to resolve it? And that's awkward. That's hard. That's
what it is. It's owning of the problem. So, why should we own the problem? It's our facilities. We don't own the escalator. It's a lot of that goes on.
A lot. Yeah, and then who's the designer of that system is the question.
And then is that appetite, as you always say, to then completely... So let's say there is a standard. One of our engineers writes, he says, no, you can fix this.
But standard still depends on the context of use. Yeah. Now we're testing it with realities.
Yes.
And project management is almost always waterfall versus agile. I have this project to install this escalator. I hand it over. Now you're the operator, right? Hang on a minute. But the operation needs continually to be tested by real-world conditions, emergent properties, as we say, and human factors.
Then you just wonder, is it just too hard? Is that the cruel
So let's not look at it until somebody dies, and then we go, oh, guess what? We've got to respond. We've got an action to take immediately, right?
Yeah, is that the, I guess that's not a satisfactory answer for our listener, but is that the answer? It's just too hard and... something's got to happen.
Let's hope it's not too hard. Hope.
Yes, you know what strikes me? Sometimes that hope is a strategy for some multi-billion-dollar organisations. Yeah, let's just hope no one dies. Let's hope no one slips.
I just triggered some sarcasm, did I?
let's just hope.
The prosecutor does not hope.
I'm a rolling sphere of sarcasm. I'm a cascading sarcasm blob.
So does that mean when you move, the ball just gets bigger and bigger?
It oscillates. It oscillates wildly, but it's true.
The kaleidoscope, every prism of sarcasm you can imagine, every color prism.
Yeah, but here's the thing. We see it, and you've seen it. Alan, you've seen it. You've been travelling a lot.
Never. My client. Oh, no.
Yeah, you've seen it. You've seen the people on the travelators and the escalators cramming and jamming and the chaos and the cancellations.
I have to say, I'm almost always the one that takes the stairs. I just look at everyone and go down the stairs and forget the escalator and travelators.
But have you noticed?
So the Australian travellers, I think, are generally very good.
Okay.
But
Americans can be pushy,
it's a very different system over there, but from what I've seen. But if your flight's been delayed one or two times, then your patience levels go down. You get more and more frustrated because you've made plans and arrangements around the time you're going to arrive at your destination, and if that blows out 4 or 5 hours, particularly if it means you're coming back in the wee hours of the morning, then it's pretty horrendous.
But I guess it's more that egress and that congestion. That's the.
But in a situation like that where you need calm and patience and people not arguing with the staff that are trying to help. Even if they're doing a bad job, it still doesn't help to argue.
No.
They're trying to make some semblance of order, right? Construct order in an awkward system, chaotic system.
Yes, I know at a small level, one way to placate travellers is I've noticed they've been a little bit more generous in the lounges, just to keep people...
But that's, again, colonised for the people who can afford to be in the lounges. Hang on.
Sometimes it's impossible.
Making all spaces accessible. I've spoken about, the psychology in airport design, have I?
No.
One of the things I do is help advise in Well Building Institute, and they do, they have design concepts to encourage the built environment to be designed for occupant health, and they have special projects. So this is very cool to be on a special project about airport design, and you may know this already, but this was like a ooh, aha moment for me. You know, in most airports, not just small regional ones, I'm thinking, but, you know, big city airports, when you arrive and you're about to check in your luggage, the very first part of your arrival is this very big, open, warehousey type of feeling, right? Like a hangar, you know, it feels like an airplane hangar. It's just huge. And the space is there, and you've got ticketing stations, and you have to check in your luggage, and you get your tickets. And you start to go through security, and just picture your journey map of all the touch points of where you're going through. Closer to your destination point is the gate and the flight travel and the actual tube of the airplane. As you progress,
It's smaller and smaller.
yeah, it shrinks. And why do you think that is? You go through your eating lounge, you're getting closer to your gate, right?
Is that to gradually get you prepared for being on the plane?
Woo! Design thinking, right?
okay.
Mentally,
Never noticed that.
No.
mentally,
No.
you know, get you prepared
Right.
For
psychologically
inside, closer.
to be in a small tube to have
Tube,
less freak out.
Right.
That makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. And then, of
So
course, you're out, and then everyone's fighting to go down the, like our listener.
We want the space again. We want to get back out to space. We've been compressed enough, and then we've got to rush to get into
Everyone's
space.
pushing each other down the escalators.
So is there any other way that you could, you know, start to design for some sense of peace and calm down that element and still feel like some oxytocin, like you belong, you don't have to compete, right? It's not status and serotonin of me getting my bag first and foremost, and, you know, getting the taxi first and whatever else. I don't know. How do you still keep designing, right? Just to keep this a little easier. Now, and there's even things like, I've been in airports where we've had to analyze job roles of security staff and baggage checking staff, and there'll be things like as passengers exit the planes and go to collect baggage claim, right? You know, there's an area where you go through double doors. I won't name where this is or anything, but you start to walk through a section and there's murals on the wall. You know, you just pause. Maybe that's supposed to be some peace and some calm and some little bit of, yay, excited about my destination. They pause and stare at these murals or take a photo. But it actually triggers alarms that are annoying. These alarms keep going off because the doors haven't closed properly, because here they are standing, and there's a security alert that if you're standing in this section too long, or you try to go back toward the main airport, you set off alarms. So the staff are hearing this loud ambient noise and getting the alarms set off again, and which stops the security system from working. So their workflow stops, which causes a jam, which gets everybody else annoyed. So you've got to look at the trickle-down effect of your design strategy. It can solve one problem and cause ramifications down the system if it's not been considered for the whole operations and resilience of the system.
It can, you know, people can be calm down and relaxed if two things are implemented: priority check-in and business lounge entry.
I thought you were about to say information.
Again, though, he's got to have the status points. What about Joe Public and the carrier workforce travel?
Let them in.
Let him.
It keeps feeding into this model that I'm giving you. You know, the big house, the $25,000 fence,
the marble bathrooms,
car, the unique racing car.
If I was in the business lounge, my plane's late, who cares?
Yeah, the marble bathrooms we heard about, the mistake in ordering the marble bathrooms.
Renee discovers that it's going to be much more expensive and says,
it doesn't matter, buy it anyway.
We hope you enjoyed that episode of Why Work. You've been listening to Trajce, Sara and Alan. And if you'd like to know more about some of the things we've talked about today, please subscribe, and we'd be more than happy to provide you with information, names of cases, and other things that may interest you. Please be aware that none of the matters we've talked about today should be construed as legal advice or any other type of advice. We're just here to talk about all things related to work. See you next time.
What you thinking? You jumped up in the system. Welcome to the system. Welcome to the system. Welcome to the system. Yeah. Welcome to the system.